Okay, what we're learning today is chapter 45, Mem Hey. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. It says, "V'yas Hashem la'adam l'ishte kasnes v'yalbishem." God made for Adam and his wife the clothes of skin, and he dressed them. That's after they realized they were naked and they didn't want to be naked anymore, and so he made for them leather clothes. So, but it's also something spiritual. We're going to learn the spiritual meaning behind this. These clothes were made out of chashmal, which in modern Hebrew that means electricity, but we learned last week what this really means is quiet speech. Chash, like in English, hash, be quiet. Mal is to speak. The nega of the light of nega. So there's a light, a luminescence that shines from nega. And nega is this middle neutral energy, which could be elevated to holiness or could be degraded as well. So this illumination of nega, which is God speaking quietly, shemakiv lezun, it surrounds the male and female energy, the man and the woman, Adam and his wife. Atzilus, the way they are in the highest, in the divine world of Atzilus, Shnikra Adam ve'ishte, and in Atzilus, God, the masculine aspect of God and the feminine aspect of God is called man and his wife because they are a mirror. Ad shetachas regleim, and this shine of chashmal, this quiet speech, it goes all the way till underneath their feet. And that also has a spiritual meaning. Like it's non veterasa shel Reb Meir hayakasuf erba aleph. Reb Meir from the Mishnayos was a Tana, and he was also a Sefer, and he had a Torah that he wrote. And instead of when it said God clothed Adam and his wife, that letter was written with an aleph instead of an ayin, which would then mean not closed leather jacket, it wouldn't mean a leather jacket, it would mean a light jacket made out of light. Which is a higher light. Like it is written, God puts on clothes, puts on light, is like a clothes for him. This whole manifestation where the clothes are not leather clothes, which leather blocks light, but rather the clothes are made out of light. In other words, we can understand this also from radio technology, that audio sound has a certain wave. High frequency means that every second there's more waves. Then there's VHF, very high frequency. And then there's UHF, which is ultra high frequency. Then there is microwaves. And then there is light that we can see with our eyes. So basically it's the same thing. It's just that it fluctuates more every second. And then it becomes actual light, which we can see. So what we're learning over here is that you could have clothes made out of light. Now, what we want to know is this metamorphosis. What is this metamorphosis where you have these vibrations which block light, and then eventually these vibrations become luminescent themselves in the future, like Reb Meir predicted? So we're going to have to understand the idea of shvira, of breaking of the vessels, vatikun, and reorganization. In other words, people think, they think there's a thing, that there was a mistake in creation and there was some sort of break. And there was some sort of break, there's some sort of, and And the question is, and that's really not what happened. What happened was, this is a very purposeful, we're going to call it a misunderstanding. But tikkun is when he's basically putting the puzzle back together, or reorganizing everything in the right spot. Basically, when you have a puzzle, it's basically pictures, and the puzzle is reorganized, and you sit and you put effort and you reorganize it. Well, why did you need to do the puzzle? How about just buy the picture in the first place? You don't need a puzzle. What do you need a puzzle for? Where everything's like broken, and then you have to. Well, the answer is because the process of rediscovering the picture, the challenge, and getting better and better at it, that is the ultimate goal, not the picture. So God creates a misunderstanding. In other words, everything is created through God's words. It's just that we don't understand God's words. God's speaking all the time. We just don't know how to read. And so the letters, they are vessels. Why they're vessels? Because they hold an idea. And they become broken. What do you mean they become broken? We're going to find out. It means they become unintelligible. V'naflu, and because of that, they have a they basically fall down. In other words, they're not considered. Their true meaning is not recognizable, and therefore they fell. And that because there is so much meaning that God wants to transfer with these letters, these letters are not able to hold the meaning that wants to be transferred. Like it's written in Eitz Chaim, like it's written, you powdered the city, the sea with your strength. Powdered. This is the idea of Toyu. The world was disorganized, wild. Toyu. What does it mean? It means Toyu is not something that was. It exists right now. Toyu means that the letters are powdered, and this is what we made broken kalim, kiyadua, like it's known. And now he's going to explain this whole idea of broken kalim. It's not a mistake, and it didn't happen once upon a time. It's happening now. Vatamar davar yadua, and the reason for this, it's known al derech moshel, like the metaphor. If you have a deep cognitive idea, which is higher than any definitions that the brain can put on it, as vada is balbulu. If the idea is too big, then what happens is the letters that try to capture it become all balbal is balbulu. They get all Babyloned. They get all babbled. Is balbulu. They get babbled. Aseichel of the intellect. Shebechinas mitzad sheba machshav in the thought mitzad miyut keicham, because the babble doesn't have the power to handle the meaning, the light. Because the light is too strong, stronger than the babble, than the words. And this is not the case when you have the vessel of the mind, that's able to capture the light of an intellect, hamuk, which is deep. Adrabah. Mugbal mismyashev nelam ha'osis alalu. What happens is the exact opposite happens. Mugbal, it becomes limited, it becomes misyashev, it becomes settled. Venelam ha'osis halalu, and these letters actually become ba'osis halalu, and the idea becomes hidden and captured by these letters. But in Yiddish, like we say in Yiddish, to grab, to grasp, to take. But if the words you're trying to transfer the idea, so what happens is when they can't, what's going to happen is for sure they're going to split up these letters, Like they explained in another place at length. For example, when you have one word and it becomes too short to be able to capture the light, harav, which is great to Shabbat inside it, what happens is that the receiver, what happens is he experiences the letters go here and there, actually, moving until you can't understand anything. Ketevas, like for example, the word vayomer, and he spoke. It has a meaning. A person spoke. It's a soft-spoken speech. While v'dibur is a strong speech. Vayomer is soft-spoken. What happens is when the soft-spoken words are not able to capture the intent, yishara vamam. What happens is the letters, is not able, the person who's listening to Vayomer, he doesn't understand Hebrew. The only thing he's not going to understand the idea. So that's what we call a breakage. And he said, what did the guy just say? He said, Vamam. He said Vayomer. No, he said Vamam. Vamam. Because it doesn't, if you put another language, that you're not familiar with, and you listen to it the first time, you're not even able to differentiate the letters properly. Shabbat mefuradim shalei kesidram, and the letters become not recognizable, and they become disorganized. But not in the proper order. What happens is when a person thinks things during the day, at nighttime, the same thoughts that a person had during the day, they actually become disorganized in the person's sleep. They separate from each other. They're not in the proper order. They're not in the proper place. They're not in their chalamis and dreams, because sleep is a restoratory program, meaning to say that the soul, in order for it to go up to heaven and to rejuvenate, it needs to shake off all the thoughts, the close of the day, which is the thought, speech, and action, which bog it down. So the angel shakes off the soul, and everything that the soul thought about falls down, and as it falls down away from the soul, it becomes disorganized, and that's when that's the experience of dreams, which are disorganized thought. Everything was from the day, but it's the same letters just appearing in a disorganized fashion. Whatever you dream about is only the things that you thought about during the day. Bilti mesudarim, disorganized. Sometimes a letter goes to this word and another letter goes to a different word, etc. That's why dreams tell lies. I mean, shav really means they say useless things. They say empty things. Dreams don't, in most cases, do not treat dreams seriously at all, because they say lies. Like it's written in another place. And this powdering, it's considered the breakage of the words, lachalakim into parts, Rabbi, many parts, v'ketanim, small parts, ki b'vei zeh ha'oish nisparim la'atzmei. Each letter, not only each word, each letter becomes separated for itself. All you have is a very small idea of the intent of the intellect. You only have a hint of the intellect that was organized and collected. In comparison to when the word was tirufim, connected up b'shleimus in a complete way. Gam hu mispar pirur acha pirur, and this words become powder one after another, until the story that gets communicated is something that is totally foreign to what the person actually thought about during the day. And this breakage into small parts, excuse me. When this letter that became separated from itself, it's only it only has a very, very small, tiny amount of the original intent. That was when everything was collected up. In comparison to when the word was all organized and collected in the right order, in a complete way, and it becomes divided up, one powder after another powdering, more powderization, until it becomes something very foreign. It's like dreams, which come from what the person was thinking in their heart during the day. In other words, emotional thought. In the thought of the heart means emotional thought. A person will not dream that an elephant went through a head of a needle. Because that is something that a person doesn't think about even during the day. It's something of the same signature, something similar to what a person thought about during the day, but not something impossible. The commission, like it's written in another place, being in Pesach, how Yosef was able to reconnect dreams, as I'm going to explain. And so Yosef was a person that would interpret dreams, and basically he's taking a bunch of evidence and putting it together in a cohesive story. That's what Yosef was doing. He was collecting up different evidence from Pharaoh's dream and putting, or whoever's dream, and making a cohesive story about it from it. And that's what we need now, because what the Shvira means is that the world seems like a broken puzzle, and we're not able to, and God is speaking and created the world, but it doesn't look like that to us. It just looks like this idea and that idea, everything's separate. And you need a Yosef to come along and open our eyes and put everything together, that we will start be able to read what God is actually saying. And that's what we call, divine Ruach HaKodesh. That's what Ruach HaKodesh is. Maybe even Nevuah. Now we can understand above regarding the idea what we spoke above, we mean in spirituality. That what's the idea of Shvuras HaKelim, broken vessels? Now we understand what broken vessels mean. There is the Toil, the light of Toil. Shizel Bechinas Pirur Upizur. Basically, it's a powdering and a separation of Isis of God's letter Shalahem. Like it's actually written, you powder the sea. Sea represents the idea of the comprehension. Basically, the meanings and the letters fall down in our way of looking at things until it looks like something totally separate from the original intent. And this is really how God creates this surrounding light of this whisper. Like it's known, it is called the clothes of skin. It's known light is three types of what is this light? What is this light? Oh, this leather. This leather is basically the letters of God, God's thought, God's speech, and God's picturing. Maisa is God's picturing. Really, these letters, they come from Toil, from the disorganized. In other words, when God intended to give over more than the letters are able to handle. What happens is these meanings, these letters fall down below, meaning to say that they are unrecognizable. However, they become a whisper, they become clothes that surround the emotions of a person. In other words, some of the message still gets through. And that little message that gets through becomes the protector to a person's emotions. And also these letters, they also become an apparently something separate, like they have their own life. And by the way, letters are actually higher than the actual comprehension. The creation of letters actually are a source deeper than their comprehension itself. Shubamidas, the bina shubamidas, the comprehension in the emotions. And this is also the meaning that the external bina hovers on top of the chicks in order to guard them, because the emotions can go in the wrong direction, and when you have this little whisper, it puts them in the right direction. So even though there's a misunderstanding, there's still enough of information that gets through that a person can still know what to do. This is basically the surrounding, basically the context of bina, of comprehension. The context protects us. That's what a makif means, something surrounded, the context. We've spoke about the closed mem. It's in a square shape. So it's a square shape. We spoke about this before, and that surrounds the comprehension, and that basically protects the comprehension from going the wrong way. You have to put comprehension in a cage in order for it to be useful. And this whole idea that we're speaking about, how you have this whisper that protects the emotions, which comes from these deep letters, which we don't really understand. Some of the meaning gets through. Well, that's a whole idea of metaphor. Metaphor means that we take something from the world that carries a certain idea, and we use that to explain another idea. And it's known that Reb Meir was very good at Mashalim, and he had used 300 metaphor. He would use 100 metaphor to explain the world of action, God's actions, 100 metaphor to explain the world of God's speech, Yitzira, and 100 metaphor to explain the world of God's thinking, Bria. And the truth is, when he used metaphor, that's because the metaphor itself is higher than the actual message that's being conveyed. We say the mitzvahs are a metaphor to convey higher ideas, but the actual physical mitzvah, in a way, is higher than it's sourced deeper than the actual explanation of the mitzvah, than the actual message which the mitzvah is a vehicle to. And this idea of metaphor, this idea of the breaking of the vessels, and you have these surrounding letters, that's also the Mishlei Shlomo, the metaphors of Shlomo, chach mois amukes b'yesef, very deep, wise ideas that can't even be conveyed with letters. The only way we can deliver these very deep ideas is by enclosing them in totally separate things. And which are very far away from the actual core concept, the core of the insight. Through the metaphors, that's when we can understand the depth of the insight. Just like a person can understand the depth of an intellect only through a metaphor, Dafka specifically through that metaphor. Metaphors are great. You will never understand it even with millions of words. Because the metaphor is actually built to match the message, Dafka specifically. Because through the metaphor we can get to the depth of the message. So that means the metaphor must be deeply connected and intimately with the message. If the metaphor and the lesson are not deeply connected, how is it possible that the metaphor can actually clearly communicate the message? The source of the metaphor, the source of the metaphor is sourced in the source of the intellect, of the message, and the metaphor actually comes from higher than the message itself. That's what we say, that what you really should pay attention to the words of the wise men and their chidusam, riddles. In a way, the riddles of the wise men have a deeper idea than when they're actually giving their deep lesson. So, depending on the deep insight that this wise man has, that's how deep they can produce metaphor. Mishlei the Rabbi Meir, just like Rabbi Meir was able to produce 100 metaphor for each world, 300 altogether. Mishlei Shlomo, and Shlomo was able to do 1,000 from each world, 3,000 altogether. Like it is explained in another place. Binyan Yedabre Gimel Afei Moshel, speaking about the fact that Shlomo spoke 3,000 metaphors. And basically he uses one metaphor to explain another metaphor, and then another metaphor. So it's like electricity, not in parallel, in series. One metaphor explains another metaphor. Like this is like is written in the Zohar. Shenimtza b'moshel achrin yeseh sham hu ha'memek v'hamokal yeseh rishon shela nimshal. In the last metaphor, the 3,000th metaphor, that captures the depth of the first, of the deepest part of the message. Kol zehu gam kein. B'shurch b'chinas eisius dat the gemim dafka yusak heitev erasechel. Shal yadam dafka yusak haberg masachan. So we understand that the letters, the same thing, specifically letters have a deeper source letters have a deeper source, then letters have a deeper source than the actual concept they're conveying. And that's why they can convey a concept. Similarly, it's understood when you take the light of Seichel and you hakshama, you make it very physical. The more physical, more concrete you explain an idea, lower and lower. That's where you're going to have the depth and the source of the idea. In other words, the more you learn practically and physically, the deeper you understand the idea. It's the same thing when you learn Gemara. If you learn Gemara, la halacha, so you want to understand how to practically do something, that's when you get the deepest understanding. In other words, the most external part of comprehension, the most external aspect of the comprehension actually has a deeper source. That is the quiet speech of Bina, this whisper of Bina. Like on this, it's written, Vayas Kutnes he made clothes of leather to block the light. But it's a protector of the intellect. The way the way the comprehension triggers the emotions. That we would avoid error. So the context, the quiet speech, that's what protects the intellect and avoids cognitive distortion. And in the physical, we want to understand everything physically. This is the idea of the placenta, the placenta that protects the child. In a certain way, the placenta, because it protects the child, it has more of the essence. Like we write in another place regarding the mother, which is comprehension, spreads her wings. Binyan b'shalom eisius mabush. And therefore, we've learned that b'shalom is the same letters as the word malbush, clothes. Now, it's very ironic because in the Belsky Brigade in the World War II, the people that seemingly were not good for anything, did not know how to fight or make food, they were nicknamed the Malbushim, the clothes. Like not, then there's no man behind them, just clothes. But over here we're saying that clothes is amazing. Clothes is amazing. It has something very deep, something deep that is not even conveyed into intellect. Etc. Similarly, the idea of the schach, the shade on top, placed on top of the sukkah, that also is an idea that it's connecting to the essence. Even though it's only a shade, somehow it connects to the original essence and conveys the essence of God. And that's the main kosher making factor of a sukkah is the shade. So shade seems to cover up the light, but really it taps into something very much deeper. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to stop screen share, and okay, just any questions? Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So I'm gonna stop the recording now. as we've learned chapter 45. These are fundamental ideas, very, very, very important ideas. And we're already heading to the end of Shara Yichud, the gate of oneness. And Bezras Hashem, next week, we're going to learn chapter 46. Hello, Rabbi?
Yes, you stopped the recording?
No, I didn't stop the recording. Maybe you stopped the recording and
Oh, I can't stop the recording. I could claim the host back. 1 second.
okay.